In part 5 of the How to Memorize Numbers Easily series, we'll talk about the process of creating your own peg list for numbers 20 to 29. To access parts 1 to 4, head over to the blog by clicking on the link below this video. You can also view them on the playlist section of the YouTube channel. The playlist is called How to Memorize Numbers Easily. Hi, I'm Nick Memo from ImpressiveMemory.com, and let's get into today's video. Back in part 3, I introduced the measure and peg methods of memory. I highly recommend you watch this video because it explains the alphabet of numbers in greater detail. In this video, we'll focus more on numbers 20 to 29 by creating memorable peg words for each of them. Let me show you how it's done. Let's look at number 20. It has the numbers 2 and 0. Looking at the alphabet of numbers, 2 is represented by the consonant sound N, while 0 is represented by the consonant sound S or Z, which, when pronounced, produce the S or Z sounds. I've talked about consonant sounds in part 3, so to understand more, please have a look at it after this video. Coming back to number 20, using those same sounds, we can create a word like nose, for example. Notice the sounds that this word produces. The N and S sounds are prominent. Nose. Next, we have 21. And 21 is represented by N for number 2 and T or D for number 1. As for number 1, I prefer using the consonant T and the sound it produces, but you can also use D if you like. What words can you create for 21? What about words like net, nut, knit, not, for example? For the word not, the K is silent, which is why we ignore it. Number 22 is represented by two N's. Think of words like none, nine, or nana, for example. Consonants N and M stand for number 23. Bringing them together, you can form words like name or gnome. The G is silent in gnome. For 24, the letters are N and R. This brings up words like Nero, the Roman emperor, or narrow. For narrow, disregard the double letter and the consonant W as it's irrelevant to the peg method. With 25, the letters N and L represent it. You can think of words like the river Nile, nail, or null, for example. Number 26 is represented by N and sh or ch sounds. When put together, you can form words like nash or notch. The N and k sounds represent number 27. What words can you think of? Nike, neck, and knack, for example. For 28, the sounds N and F represent it. A word like knife can be used. And finally, for number 29, the sounds N for number 2 and P or B for number 9 represent it. You can use words like nap, knob, and nip to associate the number 29 to them. So that's how you come up with your own peg list for numbers 20 to 29. To learn more about the rules of the measure method, head over to part 2 of this series. You'll learn why we ignore double or silent letters in our peg words. So to help you come up with your own memorable list, I'll show you mine and how I use my imagination to visualize them. You can use my suggestions, but it's highly recommended that you create your own peg list using your own imagination. So for number 20, I use the word nose to remember it. I imagine my nose whenever I see the number 20. For 21, my peg word of choice is net. I picture a net full of fish. For 22, I use the word nun, and I visualize myself talking to a nun. Name is my peg word of choice for number 23. I simply picture my own name. For 24, I visualize the Roman Emperor Nero. With 25, I picture myself swimming in the river Nile. For 26, I use the word gnash, and I imagine myself gnashing my teeth out of anger. As for 27, my favorite peg word is neck. I simply picture my own neck for 27. With 28, I use knife as my peg word of choice. I imagine myself holding a sharp knife whenever I see 28. And finally, for number 29, I visualize myself having an oddly satisfying nap. As I conclude, to practice what we've learned so far in this video, have a look at this 6-digit number, 212,029. Think you can remember this number tomorrow or the day after tomorrow? You can, if you involve your imagination and the PEG method of memory. So let's create a silly illogical story to memorize this number. But first, we have to break down this number in twos, like this. Take the first 2 digits, which is 21, and we know 21 is represented by a net. We proceed to the next 2 digits, 20, which is represented by a nose. And finally, we go to the last 2 digits, 29, which is represented by nap. Next, we come up with a silly story to link each image to the next one, each mental image, each peg word to the next one. So here's my crazy story. I imagine myself fishing using a net, and instead of catching fish, I catch thousands of noses. And finally, I imagine my nose having an afternoon nap. You see how crazy the story is? How the story doesn't make any sense at all? That makes this kind of story, this kind of imagination, extremely vivid in your mind. It pops out. Just imagine your own nose having an afternoon nap. Think of catching thousands of noses instead of fish. It's crazy, right? So when you combine net, nose, and nap from the story, you get 212,029. You don't even need to remember the number, just the peg words themselves. Now you try it. Use your own imagination to memorize this number. You can do it. If you've enjoyed this video, like and share with your friends. Subscribe and press the notification bell if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.